By way of introduction, I'd like to introduce the two gentlemen in the middle first. To my right, holding his coveted handheld device, is Jeff Hicks. Jeff Hicks is the CIO from Bedrock Manufacturing. You'll hear me referring to Filson and Shinola. Those are the two retail brands that are beneath Bedrock Manufacturing, and those guys are very ably represented by Jeff. Thanks for joining us, Jeff.
Thank you.
Also joined by Raymond Smith. Raymond Smith is the CTO from Sally Holdings. That's the company brand known better in our world as Sally Beauty. Thank you for joining us, Raymond.
Thank you.
Complementing the retailers, I'd like to introduce Jerry Sheldon from IHL. Jerry is one of the principal consultants of IHL, and I've worked with him for a number of years. He's a very experienced fellow in the world of retail. I'm very pleased to have him as part of our panel.
Thanks for having me.
And last but by no means least is Ashvin Matthew. Ashvin is the General Manager of Dynamics for Retail. And my name is Duncan Taylor. I'm the Retail Industry Marketing Lead for Microsoft Dynamics. So thank you for joining us. The format of the session, we're actually going to be touching across four major subjects this afternoon: cloud, omnichannel, mobility, and international. And we're keeping the format of the session very simple. We're going to talk about what our customers are doing today in each of these areas. And Raymond and Jeff are going to be talking about their experiences across each of those four subjects, whether it's experience of their personal history, where they've been before, whether it's an initiative that's coming from their company, or whether it's a strong opinion that what is actually in the industry isn't maybe where it should be, or that kind of thing. So I've given free rein to those guys to enthuse about those industry subjects. We're then going to go on to what Microsoft Dynamics is preparing for tomorrow, and Ashwin's going to lead that section. He's going to give you some insights as to what Microsoft is doing across those four subjects. We're kind of using it as a bit of a teaser trailer because there's lots more roadmap to be discussed in some of the other sessions, and I'll talk about those at the end. But Ashwin's going to lead that session, that part of the session. And then what may occur the day after that, I'm going to be relying upon Jerry to lead that part. So Jerry, being very connected to the retail industry, even with Microsoft and beyond, has got some great insights to share with us across those subjects. By way of stepping into the session, I'm first of all going to turn to our retail representatives and just get them to just spend a few minutes each talking to you about their retail story. So, as I mentioned, my reference to Bedrock Manufacturing under the banners of Filson and Shinola, and also Sally Beauty. So, Jeff, I'm going to turn to you first of all.
Thank you. Okay.
So, tell us the Filson Shinola story.
All right. Yes, again, I'm from Bedrock Manufacturing. We're a fairly young company. Many of our management employees actually came from the watch manufacturing background. We started about 5 years ago as a management company. We first purchased Filson, and Filson is a brand of outdoor wear focused mainly on men. Filson was started in 1897, and it was furnishing the gold rush prospectors with heavy-duty material that could keep them warm and could last through the rugged terrain that they were facing. Filson remains in business today with much the same product. Its motto is unfailing goods. Filson guarantees that its products will last a lifetime or more, and we have a lot of customers who will not replace products when they wear out, but actually send them in to be repaired. So they're the types of products, flannel shirts. We had the Cruiser, the Mackinac Cruiser jacket, wool jacket, which is the red plaid jacket, was an original Filson product. And Filson is stubbornly American-made, which was really the theme for Bedrock Manufacturing, is actually built well and built in America. As you can see in the slides there, we have 10 oilcloth pants, bags. We sell luggage. We have manufacturing facilities in Seattle where we do cut and sew. So we are implementing Dynamics AX from from the point of Filson from a manufacturing shop floor perspective. And then our other company, Shinola, which we actually invented and created, and we got the name something from Shinola. Comparing that, if you look at Wikipedia about Shinola, that'll explain that story, but it came from the World War II slang comparing something good and something not so good. With that, we bought the Shinola brand. Along with that, the original Shinola was shoe polish, and so we offer shoe polish. But our main product now is watches. We're the only American-built watch at scale. We started shipping in 2012. We're now over a $150 million company. We're growing very rapidly. We're proudly based in Detroit. We chose that city to be based in to help the revitalization of Detroit. We employ 400 people right now. We plan to employ over 1,500 people in the next 5 years. That's really the vision of what Shinola is. Of course, everything we make has to be the top quality. It has to have lifetime warranty, and it has to be made in America, or it has to have a track that it can be eventually made in America. We currently have, Filson has 7 retail stores now. Shinola started their first retail store in 2012. We now have 7 stores, and we plan on probably having 30 to 50 stores in the next 18 months. We're opening stores quickly. All of our stores are renovated buildings, so we don't go into malls normally. I think we'll open something in the Detroit airport just to represent the brand that Shinola is very well known in Detroit. But as I said, we are implementing Dynamics AX R3, and we're implementing it from shop floor all the way through modern POS, which is the device I have here. We have a nice collaboration of partners, from Sunrise Technologies to Blue Horseshoe to LS Retail, and using Verifone, which I'll go into this a little later, the device we'll be using. But we have a very rapid implementation program because Shinola, being a young company, they started on QuickBooks in 2012. Now we're running a $150 million company on QuickBooks, and we're not able to print any reports. So we're in a rush to go live May 1st, and they're quickly thereafter rolling out our stores and then doing our shop floor at Filson.
Thank you very much. Raymond, go on to you to talk about Sally Beauty.
So quick survey in here. Women do not get to participate. How many men in here know what Sally Beauty is? Yeah, that figures. How many women know what Sally Beauty is? Yeah. So a word of warning to you men. If you don't use Sally products, this is what happens. And as I can tell, several of you out there are not using Sally products. Sally Beauty Supply is, I actually work for Sally Beauty Holdings, because Sally Beauty Holdings is made up of 2 different business units. One is the Sally Beauty that you see usually close to a Walmart or a strip shopping center, and anybody can shop in Sally Beauty. There's a little bit of a fallacy sometimes that you have to be a hairdresser to shop at Sally Beauty, and that's not true. Anybody can go in there. But we do have another store called Cosmoprof, and Cosmoprof only caters to licensed beauticians and barbers. When I got the call from our CIO to potentially come and work at Sally, he had not been a CIO for a while, and when I hung up the phone and I went, he's working at Sally Beauty? He must have really been desperate. Then I went out and I looked on the internet and found out that there are 4,000 stores in North America, and it's a $4 billion company. That is a lot of bottles of shampoo. So Sally Beauty sells anything from as small as fingernail polish all the way up to high-end hair color. So if you go and get your hair colored at a beautician, it's likely she's bought that hair color from Sally Beauty or Cosmoprof. Not only does Sally have 4,000 stores in the United States, in Canada and Puerto Rico, but we also have an international presence. There's well over 500 stores internationally in Mexico and then all through Europe. That's where you find Dynamics AX for us. Dynamics AX runs our international businesses for us. As you can see here, the Sally stores When you go in there, it's amazing the amount of product that we have in there. But Sally is also, it's a 50-year-old company that over the years has done a very good job of making sure there's a lot of product in there, but we haven't always been very good about innovating from a technology standpoint. And we're just now starting to do that. For example, in our Cosmoprof stores, where you have to be a beautician to go in there, they have mobile devices in the stores that they use for assisted selling. They get their email through Office 365 on that mobile device. Believe it or not, that transformed those stores, because up until that time, they didn't have internet access in the stores. They didn't have email. The marketing materials were in the back in a big pile this high. So if someone asked about Kenra, they had to go back there and flip through to try to find that information. Now they have that on a handheld device that they can get to very quickly, and then take and email that marketing material to the stylist. So Sally is in the midst of a transformation. We recently hired a new CEO, and when he came in, he compared us a lot to Radio Shack, and that if we don't start to innovate, we're going to die. And he is very much very pro-technology, and it's an exciting time at Sally, because we're going to start doing things to innovate, and there's lots of plans in place that we'll talk about as we go along.
Thank you very much, sir. So we're going to launch straight into the industry subjects now, and the first one we're going to talk about is mobility. Now, as a lead into the discussion, when I was preparing for this, I had a great conversation with Jerry, and Jerry was quick to point out that in a recent IHL study, the actual spending growth, particularly in North America for mobile POS, the spending growth by retailers has gone up by 5.2%. It was also pretty interesting that the fixed POS growth had gone up by 4.9%. So the message there is, yeah, we're certainly enthusiastic about mobility. If you pass Ashvin's office and the team down there, I don't think there's one of those guys that isn't without a mobile device doing something with it in the R&D team. But I guess the message there is that the fixed POS isn't quite dead yet.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
The second one is a piece of work that's done by Monetate. It was a partner company that IHL got hold of. And this is a consumer chart statistic. And it's really showing information about where the transactions are occurring from consumer mobility. And the message here is that, yes, there's lots of transacting going on in consumer mobility, but the experience of the consumer is really important, because you can see the ones at the right-hand side there across all those different form factors. The ones where they're doing the adding to cart, the larger ones are on the larger form factors. So customer experience is very important in the shopping journey for these consumers, and they're doing most of their shopping where they've got a nice visual impact of what that product is, and then that's lending itself to the larger form factor devices. We can make assumptions on how that plays back into the physical retail store and around the associate devices. But if you're a retailer that's considering mobility, then you may go down one of two tracks. If it's purely for transactional stuff, then you don't need that shared experience and you're into speed of transaction throughput, then that might lend itself to a smaller form factor device. But if your reason for getting mobile is around clienteling, shared experience, talking about product, visualization, then if this consumer chart is anything to go by, then you'd be going in the direction of a larger form factor. And if we've got anything to do with it, it'll be a Surface device. Okay. First of all, going to turn to Raymond and Jeff. Let's talk about mobility specifically. Raymond, I'll look at you first, and you've touched on mobility as part of your introduction. So where do you think mobility is playing a part today in the Sally Beauty story?
So I want to tell you that we can back up those facts on the shopping experience.
Right.
On our e-commerce site, we're seeing 69% of our people coming to the site on a mobile device. But when you're looking at where they're buying from, 65% are still buying from a desktop.
Right.
So it lines up perfectly with that. Today, as I said earlier, we have mobile devices in our stores that we're using for assisted selling. Here in the next 9 months, they will also have a Microsoft Dynamics CRM client running on that iPad. That'll be a huge step for us, because now when the customer comes in, we can actually see what they purchased before. know what color lines that they're familiar with. We have the ability to know what trainings that they have done. So it's going to drive the experience with those, with the stylists that come into our stores. The same thing we're looking to do in our Sally stores, in that we looking for mobile devices in the stores to do assisted selling. Because when someone comes in the store and they're looking to color their own hair, they may not quite understand how to use that product. Well, if we could bring up a training video right there on that mobile device and show them a 3 or 4 minute video, then they know what to do when they get back home. And it'll be the same thing there that we'll try to be pushing CRM out to those stores. Mobility also for us is something that right now we don't have a mobile app, but I think clearly that's something that is driving our retail industry today. If my wife is any indication, we walk through the mall and I hear ding. Well, that store just sent her a coupon. Ding! And I call it the creepy factor because I'm not really excited to walk in and I don't know the person in the store, but they know me and they know everything I've ever bought. But for my wife and my daughter, who are the ones that buy most everything in the household, they really like that. And that's the way that shopping is going to go. So I think mobile apps in the future is going to drive a lot of what we do. And then there are other things that you can develop in the stores. It's kind of around mobility and that being able to tell when a customer comes in the store what aisle they went down. It'd be great to know if a customer just came in and all they ever did was buy color and they never went over to the appliances, because then we can drive our marketing message to them that way. So I think in a mobile space there's a lot that's going to go on in the next few years, and hopefully Sally's going to be in the middle of that.
Fantastic. Jeff, I don't think I need to convince you about the
mobile?
about enthusiasm around mobile, given that you're ready to give us a demo.
Well, I'm running modern POS right now. I think it's twofold for us. One, the device I've got, we're going to implement Verifone's newest device, the E355, which will allow it to connect to a point server, so I don't have, as a CIO, I don't have to worry about credit cards or payment methods ever touching my system. I feel real excited about that because it's something I can now not worry about. And that one payment system is going to be used in all 3 of my channels, e-commerce, at retail, and in my wholesale business, the same connectivity to the same point server. Secondly, I think it's all about omni-channel. Our typical customer visit is 45 minutes long. We are not a fast retailer. We get to know our customers. It's interesting. Customers buying our watches, and our watches range from $500 to $2,500. Customers will buy 4 or 5 watches, a typical customer. And they want to have a relationship. So omni-channel is very, very important, and it's very complex, and we have a long way to go. We're not doing that now. It's a lot of people. But we sell the majority right now of our sales are through big box retailers, through the Macy's and Saks and Nordstrom's, Neiman Marcus and others. And actually collecting information from customers who buy in those channels, as well as collecting all the information, whether they buy at e-commerce or in retail stores, is an important piece for us. And also in mobility, being able to share the story of how the product was made, because a lot of our sales come from the fact of our vision of manufacturing products locally and putting people to work in areas that have been depressed in the past. So mobility is probably the focus of what led us to the direction to AX and a centralized solution throughout our channel.
Super. Thanks, Jeff. Okay, turning to Ashvin from a tomorrow perspective, I think is it safe to say that there's nothing that we're doing today that isn't going to be mobile enabled tomorrow, Ashvin?
Probably. I think we recognized, both what Jerry, you said, and you've experienced in your stores. We knew that there was a shift happening across retail experiences, and we actually say it's retail experiences. The way we formulated our strategy about 4 or 5 years back is saying we would like to have people have retail experiences across multiple surfaces. Now, some of those surfaces would be mobile, some of them would be desktop-based, some of them may be in the cloud. And I think with a number of investments we've made, some which we can talk about probably in detail in some of the sessions, has been around the commerce runtime. The ability for us to use one runtime to drive experiences across these multiple surfaces. We know that each one of these surfaces have characteristics that determine conversion rates, and they can be different for different surfaces. But we also know that those experiences over time will migrate from one surface to the other. Actually will migrate also from one surface to the other depending on the buying pattern of that customer. And we did not believe that we knew what would predict that shift, or in which channel, from one channel or which channel that shift would happen. We also know mobility was important, both from an employee productivity perspective in a store. So we absolutely wanted to have the ability to look at a point of service beyond just being a transaction engine. We knew increasingly, if we're talking to a number of our customers, as well as a number of our prospects, that customer experience was becoming a big indicator of how many times a customer would come back into a store. And therefore, the ability to have that conversation with the customer, which is tough to do when you are behind a counter. So one of the other trends that we often talk about within the product team is moving the experience from behind the counter to in front of the counter. How do you take a normal sale and convert it into a conversation so you have a chance to make another sale sometime in the future? I mean, something that both of you touched upon. The ability to have a conversation either with respect to how do you use the product well, or in your case, how do you create that want to have more than one of a watch, is, we believe, part of the customer journey. And it goes beyond something like, Jerry, we were talking this afternoon, goes beyond the transaction, right? It goes into the whole clienteling aspect of it. It goes into how do you allow the customer to see information that then allows them to guide the customer in the decision, as well as allows them to make a future sale. And so over there, actually having something that I remember even 20 years back, we used to have, we've changed it along the way. We used to call it I/F, information in your fingertips. We believe to be most productive, you have to have information where you're using it, whether that's, if you're in behind the counter on a desk, then it's in the desktop. If it is walking around the store with either a tablet or a phone, then it's there. If you have a mobile force, then it is, maybe even on a cellular phone. And therefore, having those experiences transcend the surface in which you're having the experience is an important part of that journey, we believe. And that led us to both the ability to do what we call the modern POS, which combines clienteling with point of service as well as store reports for productivity. The ability to take that experience and transform it into a client-facing app, which would be the consumer app, as well as we believe the ability to use the commerce runtime, so you have one cohesive retail commerce engine, which you can use either offline on a mobile device or on a desktop or in the cloud. It's all part of that journey around mobility. But to your point, we do not know when that transformation is going to happen, where that switchover happens from the desktop to the mobile device. We think it might happen sometime in the future. If I knew how I could predict the future, I would probably be sitting here. I would probably be sipping my time somewhere in some tropical island. So we believe that creating the technology to allow you to, basically harness the transformation is probably part of how we can help.
Thanks, Ashwin. So, as a group, if we step then beyond tomorrow, the space is going to evolve. Unfortunately, we don't have the Mai Tais that we can drink right now. But Jerry, take a little step forward from beyond tomorrow. What sort of evolution do you think may occur?
Well, it's absolutely about extending the store, and we banter around different terms. So we talk about multi-channel and cross-channel, but the ultimate holy grail there that retailers go for is, again, what we would call omni-channel. It's buy anywhere, fulfill anywhere, return anywhere. So the concept of being able to walk into a store and have an endless aisle. So whether it's the store as a single point of distribution, that's retailing yesterday. Retailing tomorrow and in decades beyond is about every place in my enterprise is a point potentially of fulfillment, whether it's the DC, whether it's the store down the street, whether it's the store across the country, and maybe whether it's the store on another continent, if you will. So really, as we go back and we do surveys and we track what we would call progress toward that true omni-channel environment, retailers are making tremendous strides toward that. There are the obvious roadblocks that inhibit them. I think in one of the presentations this morning it was mentioned that typically a retailer will spend 80 to 85% of their IT spend budget on existing systems, so that 10 to 15% hampers them quite a bit in being able to be as flexible. I mean, it's interesting, you talk to the retailers, they know where they want to go. You talk to the vendor community is there ready to take them where they want to go, but it's the old, your eyes and your budget are not equivalent. Yeah. So therein lies the problem. The other big problem is that if you go look at all the industry vertical markets, and I'm sure with this being a retail audience, you guys live this, but one of the interesting things about retail IT spend is that retail IT spend is amongst the lowest of all industry vertical markets. On average, retail and hospitality, you guys spend between 1 to 1.3% of your revenue, generally speaking, on IT. So that's hardware, software, services, labor overhead, SaaS cloud. So that's the full pie there. So you have too many things to do and not enough money to do it. But you definitely see the progression going there. I mean, where just the store is an extension of, hey, that customer, that intimate customer relationship that consumers want, that with retailers want. It's just that journey to get there is a tough one.
Okay, interesting stuff. So there's, with mobility in mind, if you're at 3:30 tomorrow, we're hosting a roundtable on mobility reaching light speed. We're very pleased to be joined by Delta Airlines to help us walk through that. That's been hosted by Esther. And we've also got a mobility-focused product session on Wednesday at 2 p.m. Where we're talking specifically about POS clients and immersive mobile experiences. So be sure to come along to that. We're all enthusiastically talking, and I'm afraid I'm the disciplined one that's going to have to moving us forward. So we're going to talk next about the omni-channel customer engagement. It was difficult to talk about mobility without talking about omni-channel. Yeah. So this might actually go a little bit quicker. As a step into this subject, a couple of interesting statistics. For the U.S. market, holidays for the 2014 holiday sales, sales grew by 4.5%. Online sales grew by 13.9%. Mobile sales grew 50%. So there's certainly growth coming out of the holiday sales. Some of it's been driven by the physical store. Plenty of it's been driven by commerce that's going on outside the four walls of the store, but complemented by the store.
Absolutely.
Just picking on something that one of the communications that we had, Jerry, you referred to 84% of shoppers using digital tools before and during their trip to a store. We've had statistics around that for a few years around the percent of customers that are using one channel to complement another, going as high as 84%.
And that's part of that's one of the fundamental drivers behind omni-channel is that we as a consumer. Oftentimes we know we're better equipped, we have more information at our fingertips than store associates. So it doesn't, when retailers talk about a differentiated in-store experience, that's not the differentiated in-store experience that they're really going after. So it really forces retailers to update their game. I mean, and certain retailers will even expose their inventory to search engines, so you can find out what's in stock. Where I might be able to go to Home Depot, their website, hey, I want widget XYZ. It tells me exactly how many are in stock in my store that's local, yet a store associate may not have access to that same information, and that's what's got to change.
Sure. So I've put this slide up. I'm actually calling this slide revisionist history. When we look back at the evolving description of what the channel engagements mean, we're now calling it revisionist history because we're now looking back at the other names that have been used and describing them as something inferior before today. So I'm not going to step through all these because you know them as well as I do, but safe to say that the position that we're in now is the expectation is that in an omni-channel world you're expecting fully integrated. You're expecting shared inventory. You're expecting no silos. And when you talk to people like myself and Ashvin and any of the team from Microsoft, we're talking about a single engine that's driving all of that as well, to not just because we think it's the right thing to do, but when it comes to enabling new channels or altering the offering in a particular channel or changing the way that you're transacting, doing that multiple times is just going to be expensive and long-winded. So bringing it under a single engine is definitely the way to go. So again, I'm going to turn to our two retail representatives. Jeff, you very quickly went on to omnichannel in the previous discussion. Anything you want to add from an omnichannel perspective?
We're a unique case. We're a new company. We're growing quickly. We're planning on growing to $1 billion in 5 years. I mean, it's a rapid growth. We don't know which of the traditional channels is going to be the fastest. So I guess what I can say is we're trying to prepare a single solution so that it doesn't matter which of the channels grows the fastest. We want to look at it as one channel.
Right. Good stuff.
I mean, I don't have a lot of history to tell about my company, but it's definitely, the customer doesn't care where they buy our products. They want information on what the product is, what are the new product offerings, and we want information on how we can sell accessory products with those products we've sold.
Yeah.
So,
thanks. Raymond, anything to add there?
Sure. His company is a threat to, his type of company is a threat to Sally, because we're 50 years old. We have a homegrown ERP in the background that runs on an AS400 on RPG programming, and we cannot get to omni-channel. There's just too many technical hills that we've got to ascend to get there. So we definitely have cross-channel. We have a website presence. We do direct sales into salons. We have stores. We have the channels, but they're not integrated. If someone orders something from our website today, the inventory that it says that we have on our website is actually the inventory from yesterday. Right. So there's a possibility you could order, and then by the time it gets to be fulfilled, that bottle of shampoo or that bottle of conditioner is not there.
Right.
So a newer company that doesn't have the hurdles of a legacy company has the ability to move faster. And so that is definitely a threat to Sally. Mm-hmm. And we're well aware of it, and we're moving very rapidly to try to fix it. But that's not something you fix in 3 months or 6 months. That's a 3 to 5 year project to fix that type of hurdle.
Yeah. Okay, just stepping into tomorrow a little bit, Ashvin, around omni-channel.
Yeah, and I think we kind of touched on a little bit of all of this in the previous conversation, and I think it'll be the theme through the entire discussion. We've never looked at this in its isolation. I mean, to your point, Jeff, we've always looked at it and said it's mostly in either the vendor's or the retailer's mind when we actually distinguish between the channels. Mm-hmm. I mean, most customers, exactly to your point, oftentimes will start their journey in one of their channels, you know, to touch you as a retailer in another channel, and maybe sometimes even transact on the third channel. And we often have felt, even within the team, that mental picture that we often have, because we are technologists, we always look at it and say, oh, that's the web, that's a mobile device, that's the store point of sale. All really doesn't matter when it comes to the customer journey. Because ultimately, as a retailer and we as a system vendor are trying to do is to engage with that customer, nurture that customer along their journey in that shopping experience. So, from a technology point of view, we've always looked at it as said, yes, there are distinct tools we can bring to bear in these channels, but ultimately if you don't combine these various experiences into one cohesive experience, both from a business rules perspective, which we did with the CRT, but more importantly from how the information flows across these various channels and even beyond the channels. And in fact, one of the big things we pride ourselves, to your point about doing everything from looking at manufacturing down into the channels, is we believe that oftentimes as we go, people go omni-channel, we forget that it's not just the channel, it's the supply chain. It's the available to promise. You know, did I make a promise to a customer that I can't fulfill. That can be just as bad as making a sale. In fact, it may be better, in some ways, if you look at from a long-term perspective, to have actually given a date that the customer didn't want in the hopes of having that, what I would say, that integrity with the customer of what you said, right? So we've looked at it from not only the cross-channel perspective, but more importantly from the perspective of saying, how do you take it everything from the sourcing down into the manufacturing, into the distribution, into the channels, all as one cohesive engine with the same schema, the same business rules, because oftentimes there's a lost in translation to which we want to avoid. But again, we also know that, very similar to what you said, Raymond, you may not start the journey, you can't, most of us don't have the luxury of changing the system in one fell swoop. So you often start the journey in one channel or from the back end and then move into multiple channels. And that we support that aspect too. So fundamental to that belief is that notion of trying to create as much as possible within a retailer the element of cohesiveness. So you're able to then have that interaction with the customer that has, what I would say the notion of supporting it with either the delivery of the item or the delivery of the promise. In some ways, the promise of whatever your brand or your product represents to that customer. And for us, we take almost a philosophical approach to that, sometimes to our detriment too, because it means that we are often working on technology in multiple iterations as such. But it is something we believe in. It is a promise that you make to the customer and able to fulfill that across multiple channels as well as within all the other processes that allow you to operate dynamically and fulfill that promise is an important part of that journey. And we'll kind of touch on the, the eye chart and the technology behind it in the multiple sessions.
Absolutely.
We have.
I'll come back.
If I could add real quickly
Sure.
to that. That's interesting that you brought that up, because we have found that our problem, if we do this right, our largest challenge will be allocating inventory for customers.
And in most cases.
And that means we've done our job right, because we know what everyone wants. We just have to decide when to rob Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah, or hopefully
And hopefully
be able
I can
to
make it enough, so I can get Peter taken care of also.
Yeah.
So Jerry, I'm blaming the analyst community for the revisionist history stuff, because there was certainly you guys that were pressing the change of name and how that evolved to represent the fact that it wasn't just multiple channels.
Well, that's the nice thing about predicting the future is that if you predict far enough out, by the time your predictions become wrong, hopefully people have forgot about those predictions.
So is there an omni-channel 2.0, or is this have we got to the end state?
Oh no, I don't think you're ever at an end state. It's unfortunately to use a buzzword, it's constant evolution. As we were sitting here talking about this, and you talk to retailers, and even as a consumer, you walk into a store, and it's interesting that I think some of the biggest challenges that retailers face is not the technology piece, it's the people piece. And what I mean by that is, as we sit up here and we talk about the retailers represented, we have a 2-year-old retailer, we have a 50-year-old retailer. And where's change the hardest? Change is the hardest for the 50-year-old retailer, and not because they're a 50-year-old retailer, but the change is hardest because they've spent 50 years being a store merchant. But what do I mean by that? They've spent the last 50 years, they've perfected the store experience. But the store experience is now much broader than that. It's about, again, an endless aisle. It's about being able to fulfill from another store, fulfilling at a district, at a distribution center, the clienteling aspect of things, getting to know you as a person, understanding your purchase history and the suggestive selling aspect of that. So it's now much broader. So, I often find, and again, as we track technology, we know in a lot of retailers that I walk in as a consumer, where that retailer is in some key aspects of their omni-channel maturation, if you will. But I often find that we'll go in and we'll look for a product and, be met by a very engaging salesperson, form, fit, size, can I help you with the dressing room? Oh, we don't have this item, and that's where the sale stops. But then I know, hey, you guys have the software behind the scenes where you can fulfill from another store, or you can check your distribution center, or you guys have inventory. I know the POS system that you guys are using, so you have the inventory visibility, but you have to prompt that with a sales associate, and then they're there, to help you. But the reality is that most salespeople these days, they really are challenged with what it means to be an omni-channel merchant. So there's absolutely technology behind the scenes. I mean, because the reality is, as Duncan showed the maturation chart from multi-channel to cross-channel to omni-channel, every retailer is at a different place, in that evolution. So you go back and you look at some of you pull back the curtains, and there's a lot of ugliness that on the front end may look like true omni-channel, but it's duct tape and baling wire sort of behind the scenes with these integration points kind of making it all work. And you just hope that the system doesn't crap out on Black Friday, because you're bagged if it does. But there's a lot of that kind of going on behind the scenes. So what'll happen as we go forward is that piecemeal by piecemeal, retailers will be able to kind of address those systems. I mean, for us personally, one of the interesting things that we see in our research, and I think the chart that the data was accurate that Duncan showed, but when he was talking about impulse growth, that was a survey of primarily Tier 1 executives. So right now there's some different things happening with your plus $1 billion retailers versus your mid-tier versus your getting down into your kind of your SMB market. And they've got some sort of different priorities, but kind of one of the interesting things that we're seeing large retailers focus on, kind of talking about when you pull back when you pull back the curtains, the baby's ugly kind of thing, is that what we're finding is a lot of retailers have kind of taken, they're continuing to do mobility, but what they're saying is that, hey, if we are really going to have a true omni-channel, shopping environment, we got to go get this enterprise order management thing fixed. It's just that centralized order management hub that sees an order independent of what channel that comes in. It sees that as the same, independent of the channel. So it's sort of that foundation, if you will. I mean, if you go build a house, one of the most important things if you build a house is your foundation. It's something nobody sees, but you get a problem with your foundation and you have problems for the remainder of the house. So I think that's one of the things that retailers have recognized is they've grown up these independent, disparate channels that really didn't talk together, but they recognize, hey, I have to have these channels. I mean, it's just like the first websites that went up. People said, I have to have a website. I don't know if I'm ever going to make any money on it or how I'm going to make money, but I have to have a website. So we've figured out how to make money in those, but now we have to figure out how to make all those pieces and parts work together. Because again, a consumer, they don't give a rip about what channel. They don't want to talk channels. You talk to them about omni-channel and their eyes glaze over. They don't care about channel. They just want to be able to buy it independent of the device. They want it to be, to be able to buy it in the store, to be able to find it at another store. They want the price online to be the same as in the store. So, by having these multiple channels, we've created some, when we have zonal pricing and stuff like that, we have those for a reason, but we've also kind of created some headaches. So I think, Omnichannel 2.0 will start to eradicate a lot of that back-end ugly mess, and you'll really see some tremendous return on investment activities. And then, then we'll have IoT, and I don't want to get ahead of myself and talk about IoT because that's one of my other talking points, but IoT will be another opportunity in that whole customer intimacy that we're really going after.
Super. Anything to add there, gents? I think you said it all there, didn't you?
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Just by way of additional sessions, we've got a couple of great sessions talking more about omnichannel over the next few days. On Wednesday at 11, we've got an omnichannel excellence session that's hosted by Karen, along with Sitecore and a couple of customer content. And we've got an omnichannel focus session on Thursday at 11:30 as well, where we're talking about some more in-depth product capability around that. Moving quickly on, we're now into cloud and deployments today, tomorrow after that. So this is in danger of being a 3-hour subject, so I'm going to ask my panel to be brief, but cloud is offering up quite a variety of opportunities, not just for obvious deployment things, but also for some efficiency in the speed to market for new retail initiatives. Jeff?
Cloud's a big subject.
That was the same too.
Yeah. Right now, I want my staff, I don't want technologists in my staff, I want business people. There's a lot of components to make this all work. I would like to see the day where I can just go buy, like I buy Office 365, I can buy my enterprise systems the same way. I don't care what you run it on. I just know it's there, and I can focus on how to address my business with it. To me, that's what the cloud is truly going to bring me eventually.
Are you making any use of it today? Have you thought about it from a dev test environment?
I'm hosting everything independent of me.
Yeah.
So when I go internationally, I don't have to worry about that infrastructure. I do not want to buy infrastructure, so I'm putting everything there, and I'm looking for the day that you all have a different way of me purchasing my ERP.
Right. Okay.
One that's simple. Simple.
There's a challenge. Thank you. Raymond?
I think cloud has so many applications. First, just from an infrastructure perspective, to do exactly what he's talking about. Do I need server admins? Do I need network guys? There probably won't be a day where I get rid of all of it, but it's an aspirational goal. But clearly, where cloud could come into play for us is with augmented reality. Imagine, ladies, if you could go into a Sally store and stand in front of a Connect box and reach up and pick a hairdo. It puts it on you. Then you pick the hair color that you want, and you can sit there and you can see what that would look like on you. I could imagine that would be a big benefit, that you know before you go to the stylist how it was going to look. Or if you're a stylist and you get home and you forget how to apply that color, but if there was a QR code on there that you could click on, that all of a sudden another stylist pops up on your screen and could walk you through how to use that. Just think of how you could monetize that through loyalty programs. All of that would be powered by the cloud. So I think in our world, those are kind of the directions we would see the cloud helping.
Yeah. So Ashwin, I'm guessing cloud, I'm anticipating that cloud's a pretty big subject for you.
We come from Seattle. There are clouds all over. We know the cloud. We own the cloud. No one else should be able to. So yeah, the cloud is definitely part of what we're doing. I mean, in fact, if you look through the dynamic session at Convergence, you will actually start seeing a little bit of that sun kind of being dulled out by the lot of cloud that we'll be talking about. I mean, you know, we started that journey actually even on AX 2012. You know, we have now Azure enabled, and then we have the lifecycle services, which allows us to basically deploy even the latest version that we have on the cloud, that is on Azure. I mean, coming to your point about not wanting to buy, you know, hardware. I mean, converting from CapEx to a OpEx kind of motion, which for retailers is hugely important. I mean, you know, so that's something we are working on definitely now. Actually, is in place. So, but we also look from a transformational perspective, as you were pointing out. There's a huge amount of things we can do to transform beyond just hosting it. So if I looked at bread and butter cloud, you know, what do you do for a retailer? It would, of course, be everything around the application life cycle, right? How do I get something onto a dev environment where you're doing your first customizations? How do I get into a test environment, and then how do I put it into production? How do I manage that from an elastic perspective so you're not overpaying for either the hardware or even, for that matter, the software, right? You're only paying as you use it. It's something we absolutely have embarked on the journey. You know, if you're interested even in, you know, in AX 2012 and how that can be on the Azure cloud, definitely would love to talk to you about it. We also look at it from the perspective of something that I think you alluded to, which is how do you simplify it? How do you come up with something that you're looking at? How do I become a better retailer? How do I add my secret sauce to a certain element that already exists, which I don't have to go and figure out, right? And that could be everything from the infrastructure down into the actual software as a service. And that journey we have already embarked on. You know, there will be some conversations in Convergence which will grow in momentum in the other months around something that we will hear to refer to as AX7, which is a completely cloud-enabled version of AX. Actually, as a teaser, if you come to our sessions, you might see a little bit of that. So the future is now. And then, of course, the whole performance and scale part of it, right? How do you scale out across geographies? How do you go across the world? How do you scale out for retail events, either Black Friday or a launch that you're doing? All something that should be looked at more from a, we believe, OPEX perspective rather than a CAPEX perspective, right? I have something, I'm willing to pay for that elasticity, but it only lasts for a certain amount of time, which could either be an event around a holiday or a shopping kind of event, or something that you do. And then we also believe the cloud, in many ways, to your point, allows us to define experiences that go beyond what you can do with when you own the infrastructure. This could be everything from a POS that can be both on your cached as a modern POS, but the same version of the POS actually being on the cloud. And again, another teaser. We will be showing some of that if you come to some of the sessions. We believe that's extremely important. And then, of course, harnessing the cloud, what I would say, in a truly transformational way, which is around machine learning, the ability to use data. Actually, the amount of crunching that we can do, we have the Azure machine learning, and actually we're starting to work on some retail features that actually will allow you to use data streams like weather, actual events, to be able to allow you to correlate using machine learning. And actually the software figures out rules that you may not have even figured out. We actually have that running right now in the retail portion of AX. We are deciding when we will release it. But then that becomes a system of intelligence, a system of prediction, rather than a system of what we have always looked at ERP as a system of record or engagement as such. We're moving beyond that, and actually that is today. So a lot of what we're doing in the cloud has to do with using what I would say the infinite compute and the infinite data to be able to bring together those data sources, whether they are from your point of sale or whether they are from other sources like social media, other events that you can see, trends that you can predict based on what indexing the web that you can then use to make that decision. And actually we have versions of that running. We're just trying to perfect those models as a part of the Azure ML, both from, I would say, a retail perspective as well as a prediction of the, what I would say the supply chain. Take the Seattle strike. We had a port strike for the last 2 to 3 months. It's amazing how much of disruption that has caused to actual retailers. To the point of where people are actually flying in at enormous cost parts into the U.S. because the West Coast ports have all been locked up in a strike. That is something that you can predict both from, I would say, a model perspective as well as its impact on your supply chain. Those are all things we're looking at from a cloud perspective, and a long answer to a simple question.
We're going to skip forward. We're starting to run out of time. I would like to spend a bit of time on international and deployments. By way of stepping into this, we're seeing some varied POS growth, both from physical POS and MPOS in different regions. So you can see some really interesting percentage growth coming out of, particularly out of APAC for mobile point of sale.
Absolutely.
And also you're seeing the largest growth there coming out of APAC for physical fixed point of sale as well. But also some pretty healthy growth coming out of some of the other markets as well.
Right.
So international is certainly on the agenda from a technology and deployment and rolling out new systems perspective. This is really representing however the US market is still the dominant market. So you can see the size of software spending across specialty and general merchandise. That line that's above all the others is the US market. So despite the fact there's some healthy growth going on in some of the other areas, those percentage growths are kind of put into perspective when you realize that the comparison point there is the US. Without the US, that's what the growth looks like across different geographies. So very similar growth patterns, smaller starting points. Interesting one there is, despite the size of the economy, the line at the bottom there is China. So despite the fact they've got a bulging economy, they're still not spending that much comparatively on software spending. So yes, there's some really fascinating stories coming out of some of the larger cities in China around their journey to omni-channel, using home delivery from physical store as a very quick way of getting product into home without the consumer having to carry it, because of the type of commuting that they do. But kind of a reflection on the fact that the growth percentages are there, but not necessarily the growth volume. So, Raymond, just touching on Sally Beauty, you've got some international presence on Sally Beauty. That's, I'm sure that getting into international locations is still not an easy thing to achieve.
Yeah, the number one beauty market in the world is the United States. Number two is Brazil.
Right.
And we have just cracked that nut to be able to get in there. Certainly international is a growth strategy for us, because we're saturated in the United States and pretty much have grown as far as we can go. International presents different challenges, but it clearly it gives us the ability to do business in a different way, and we've seen that in Mexico and in South America. We're in Chile and Peru today, and we're seeing those markets grow fairly rapidly. We're also in Europe, and those markets are doing okay, but not near as well as South America. So where you're showing those spending trends in LATAM being low, we're seeing those skyrocket. So, but clearly that's where we're leveraging Dynamics AX to help us in all those international stores.
Good stuff. Jeff?
Well, interesting. We will probably have 25% of our growth will probably be in Europe. But we have a store in London now that's doing very well for some reason. People in the UK like buying made in Detroit. But as the size we are, the challenge I have is I have no infrastructure to support that. So the cloud is absolutely the solution, and the timing of Azure and putting a cloud offering for AX is really timely for us. So that's our focus for 2016.
Right, good stuff. Getting international requirements and product included, that must be one of the most difficult things to achieve.
It is. We spend, we are lucky that we actually have a very distributed development team. We have literally only about 40% in Redmond, 30% in Fargo, and sizable number in Copenhagen, probably in the 20 to 25%, and then Sao Paulo, talking to Brazil, Moscow and Shanghai. So we actually take the international capabilities of the solution to be extremely important, because most retailers do get saturated in one market or the other, and for them growing globally is a big part of how they grow their business. And so we've always looking at retail, the Dynamics for Retail, as well as the Dynamics AX and CRM products as a big part of, how do we, as Microsoft being an international company, create an international software, and that's part of our roadmap. But you're right. I mean, looking at all the regulatory features as well as what I would say desirable functional features is always a moving target. One that if you look at countries like Mexico, fiscal countries, I mean, it's extremely painful for retailers, and one that we continue to work on. I mean, it's definitely a work in progress, and also an often changing landscape when it comes to government regulations.
Anything from the analyst perspective, Jerry, on international rollouts and getting into new countries?
Well, I do kind of want to go back to cloud, and it'll kind of feed into this somewhat. But three big things that I think are driving cloud that I did want to mention. It's first and foremost, retail. The return on investment is absolutely tremendous. So as we model, we're seeing IT spend with SaaS cloud growing at 30, 35, 40%. And you see that in a lot of different geographies. And, we sort of, I've seen numbers as high as 5 to 1 for every $5 I'm spending in software, service, labor overhead, and hardware, that I can spend $1 with SaaS. and replace that. We bookkeep about 2 to 1, but the ROI is just absolutely huge on that. The other thing is just the ability for a retailer to not have to be an IT shop, for them not to have IT as their core competency, to allow them to be a merchant and allow that to kind of be their core competency and their key differentiator. So I think that is absolutely, that's huge as well toward cloud adoption. Then the other thing is the ability to have the latest and greatest, to be able to say, hey, you know, I may not have the biggest IT spend, I may not be the biggest retailer, but I can have all the feature function of as a small retailer, I can have the latest and greatest feature function of the largest retailers rolled out today. And you know, that allows that, you know, that boundless constraint on what your store experience allows you to be. So there you allow your store experience, your business processes to be what they want, as opposed to allowing your software capability to dictate what the store experience is like. So, and absolutely with, you know, last mile connectivity all over not all over the world, but in many places across the world, last mile connectivity is so great. It's, you know, cloud is a tremendous enabler of expansion.
Right. Jerry, thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.
Jeff, Raymond, Ashwin, thank you very much for sharing your insights. Just by way of finishing the session, apart from thanking my panel, is to just talk about the sessions that we've got. Feel free to take an image of that, but I think you'll find it a little bit easier to navigate than your session guide. I've got physical copies here. The sessions highlighted in yellow are the business value sessions. So please feel free to come to those. The blue sessions are the product focus sessions, giving you insights on the product capability. And we've also added to that where we've got some complementary sessions as well. There's one in particular around big data that's on Wednesday at 3:30. That'd be very useful. That's very retail focused. So we'd be very happy for you to come along to those. In addition to that, we've got a whole collection of our partners that are exhibiting in the show. So where you have time and can get round the show floor, please take some time, visit the partners. They've done things with the product that goes beyond what we've talked about today, including vertical specialization as well as additional capabilities. So we'd be really happy to see you there. And just a very small plug for our own team. There are myself, Karen, Esther, and Luke. We'll be in the industry area on the expo floor. My 3 comrades are in the front row here. So if you want to talk to us about navigating around any of this stuff that we've talked about today and who to talk to, then we'll be there to help. Very lastly, connect with us through retail.dynamics.com. Connect with us on Twitter and on Facebook as well, and we'd be more than happy to help us with your conversation. With that, my thanks to the panel, and thank you very much. Thank you.